Hello, I am Dr. Alana McLaughlin, and today I'm summarizing the talk we did yesterday on stress and sleep because this is a huge foundation for most people out there. And I know most people also can't make it in person into a class. I would love to make these more open and be able to do Zoom once a week for people who are not here in the Matanuska Valley. But for now, I'm doing these summaries. So I will work on that of getting a time set up where I can Zoom because I don't think it's going to integrate well while doing it in person and then also trying to record at the same time. So, the summary for yesterday, we started introducing the idea of what we would use to help support our sleep. It follows up from last week's conversation in having this rhythm, this circadian rhythm of our melatonin and cortisol. And if our cortisol is staying too high, it metabolizes out or makes our melatonin come down instead of staying up and keeping us asleep. So, how do we manage that cortisol aspect within the body, which is stimulating? It's more of one that keeps us, it will wake us up in the middle of the night, it can make it difficult to fall asleep. So, most commonly, I have people come in and they say they wake up in the middle of the night, which was the case for yesterday as I was talking with people. So, we looked at a sleep formula because generally, if you pull a sleep formula off the shelf, it's going to have several components in it, and then I can explain why they're each in it. So, the one that I pulled off the shelf yesterday, it helps to, the claim on the bottle is it helps you to go to sleep easier, it helps you to stay asleep longer, and it helps you get a deeper sleep. So we started with the herbal part, and the first ingredient on there that I pulled out to look at was passion flower. I love passion flower, and if you're on this, I encourage you to go search a picture of what they look like if you've never seen one. They are beautiful. These very intricately designed flowers that come in usually like shades of purple and blue and white, and they're gorgeous. So if you think about this doctrine, the signature or the doctrine of the signature is what that can provide for us in our body then. And passion flower with this beauty is like very uplifting, but it's like this beautiful calm as well. And it's just like being able to attend to a lot of details, but maintain this beauty within it or this like flow within it is really what I get from passion flower. So it can be a great one to take during the day if you're needing that calming. Excuse me. I wasn't expecting that. But it can also be a great one in a sleep formula like this because it just helps get us into that place where sleep is safe and it is like this beautiful calm that we can then get rested as we need to because sleep is amazing. It does so much for our bodies. And I can share this that I couldn't share yesterday, laying down with my youngest last night, getting ready for bed. He's like, I love, how do you say it? I love getting ready for bed now, or I love bedtime now. And he's one that's always had a challenge with sleep. And so I was like, "Oh, why is that?" And he's like, "Oh, it's just, he was doing some breathing and he's like, it's just like I feel calm and like everything and sleep is so good for us." And so I was like, "Oh, it's only taken a little while, but he finally understands like why it feels it. It does. It feels so good when our body is naturally moving into this space where then we get to easily fall asleep and we get to wake up in the morning feeling rested." And so all of that ties in with passion flower. We had a little bit of a divergence in that conversation yesterday because we talked about this doctrine of what of plant medicine of what it can be good for. And up here in Alaska, we have a lot of Devil's Club. And so we talked about that of how these plants are very aggressive. If you get hit by one of their thorns, it is very irritated. It can cause like bruising. It can take a long time to heal, but if you actually take and dig up the root and process it and decoct it and create a salve, it can heal things like what it creates. And nettles is the same way. We have a lot of nettles up here. And you can actually eat them. And if you get it on your skin, it's like this red, irritated, like high histamine response. But in a lot of formulas, like I use one called Dehist, and it's in there. It's in a lot of allergy-based formulas to where it actually calms down that histamine response when we use it internally or making it into like a tea. So we talked about herbal infusions, which if you've followed me for a while, you've heard me talk about herbal infusions before. And those ones are great for you take that dried herb, you fill a mason jar, kind of up to um, like a third of it, and then you fill the rest with boiling water, put a lid on it, leave it overnight, and then you strain it off the next day, and then you can drink that liquid and get the benefits and the minerals and the protein out of that plant, more so than if you just make a tea out of it. You can also make like a tincture. One gal in office had a dandelion root wine that she'd make. So we're like saying, oh, could we use that as the alcohol base to then make a tincture out of? And I was like, we'll have to do some research or look at that. And I mentioned the um, Herbal Medicine from the Heart of the Earth by Dr. Cheryl Tilden as a good resource if you want to make your own medicine. So um, that was our first kind of side note looking at herbs. Other herbs, as we're talking about stress and sleep, that I'm thinking about in there, magnolia is a really great one that is in a formula such as like cortisol manager. It helps actually metabolize out cortisol, which means breaking it down and clearing it out of the system. So remembering our rhythm, if we bring down cortisol, our melatonin can naturally come up and stay up, and vice versa. So then in the morning, melatonin comes down, cortisol comes up. So we want to create a nice rhythm of going to bed and waking up within a couple of hours at least every single day to help that body rhythm. The support around that would be magnolia. Other herbs in there are usually like valerian is more of a nervine, and it's a pretty strong nervine to where it's actually as labels like do not use while driving or operating machinery or whatnot. That was really one I reserved mostly for right before bed. That was in the formula 303, valerian, magnesium, and passion flower, which those three together can help if pain is an aspect that is preventing you from going to bed, or like muscle spasm, or sometimes with headaches. And that one we've seen great results with as well, taking it before bed and you being able to go through the night without having that discomfort keeping you awake. And it's looking at different specific types of pain, but valerian is that herb. Other herbs that we looked at in different formulas for sleep, chamomile is common, lavender is really common. And then we got into some of the nutritive parts of the formula that I had. So magnesium, we had a great discussion on magnesium. And this opened up too, because I talked with somebody prior about there are so many different forms of magnesium and they do different things, a little bit of different things in the body, depending what we're trying to accomplish. So if we have somebody who's needing more of like brain support, migraine, focus, like calming down the mind before bed, magnesium glycinate is a great source for that. Or just in general, you can take it during the day as well, but you'll see it in a lot of those type of formulas versus if we need something more for like muscle or the digestive system, which is a muscle, to help with calming or motility, to get our bowels in order, magnesium citrate is a better choice for that. So those are options for, as I'm looking at a formula, what forms of magnesium are in there, what would be used in different formulas for what we're trying to accomplish. And I apologize, that sneeze also made my nose run a little bit, so I apologize. The next step in that, looking, magnesium can be like life-changing for some people with sleep, just by adding that in before going to bed. The other components, L-theanine, GABA, tryptophan came up in a conversation. These are all working on the neurotransmitters in our brain, which are the inhibitory, or the ones that are more calming in our bodies. So that can make a big difference with, again, kind of some of the busy mind, or if we have difficulty falling asleep, to help bring that sense of calm to us a little bit easier. And most formulas in there, that is that claim of helping to go to sleep easier. So that's that part of the claim. The other component of this formula in particular, it also had 5-HTP and melatonin in there. So melatonin, most people are familiar. We talked about it a little bit in the video last week, but that's our rhythm. Like if we can bring up our melatonin enough, sometimes it's enough to overcome that cortisol, and it will then keep us asleep. And sometimes it's not. We also need that cortisol support. But some people, they can take melatonin and they're fine, but then they wake up in the middle of the night. That's where serotonin comes in, because serotonin will convert into melatonin to help us stay asleep. And that's that claim on the label that will also keep you asleep better. And then person in office asked me, well, what about tryptophan? Because we hear about that idea of, eating turkey dinner or whatnot, then you get that sleepy hormone, because tryptophan I had to look it up to confirm, but yes, I was right. Tryptophan converts into serotonin, converts into melatonin. So it's again going to extend. Usually you don't see it in formulas, but it's like, okay, well, are there foods that you could eat before bed that would also help sustain this? And of course, like turkey comes up, but looking at the list, nuts and seeds are on there. I think even some fish, and there were a few other food items that you could eat before bed. I'm like, oh, interesting, because a lot of times, like I said last week, if you have trouble stabilizing your blood sugar, then having like a handful of nuts and seeds before bed can help make you or help you sleep through the night because it keeps that blood sugar steady so your cortisol doesn't spike. So that's another way of looking at it of, okay, if we unwind this, can we then go back to getting it from food? And I think I don't remember last week if I mentioned it with magnesium. Another way to get magnesium is to take a banana and you wash it, cut off the ends, take the peel and put it into some water to boil for like 10 minutes, and then you let it cool and drink that water. Is a great natural source of magnesium if you want to try that out. So, and if you want to be more like food based. So, clear that as we're kind of continuing to unwind formulas, those were the main ingredients. I think I just hit all of them that were on that bottle that we had looked at in office. And somebody had mentioned, oh, yeah, they had a formula similar. It had several of those things in it. But now we understand more of why certain formulas have different things in it compared to others, if they're more targeting to help around going to sleep versus staying asleep and like getting into that actual good quality REM sleep. Um, Other factors that I brought up yesterday, I'm trying to just like summarize to make this somewhat short and succinct, is the use of like this rhythm. So in Chinese medicine, if we are having trouble sleeping at night or waking up, sometimes it means that something on the other side of that cycle, so like during the daytime cycle, is not being energized enough, or we are not getting enough movement during our day to then have that time for rest. So if we consider that and notice patterns on days when you don't sleep as well, were you more sedentary that day? Did you have more stress that day? Did you maybe go to the gym so then you felt better, or you went out for a walk or a hike and then you felt better and you slept better at night? So the philosophy there is that we should be having like this balance of 12 hours of moving and 12 hours of calm um, during our daily cycle that will keep it in rhythm. And the other part of that too is then, are we respecting those times when we have more fire for digestion, and then we kind of cool it down in the evening and we eat less or fewer heavy foods so that our digestive system can then be replenished, and at night we can reset, we can detoxify, we can go through those processes without causing a stress reaction or not having enough energy or whatnot to do that. The other part we brought in is, I always bring in frequency. So talking about this bioenergetics and the frequency of our body is using like essential oils. So I have a couple that I showed yesterday. One was Motivate and one was Serenity. So for example, Serenity has lavender and cedarwood. If we think of even just those, lavender is usually very calming, and cedarwood, if we think about the immensity of these cedar trees and how well they're like rooted and steady and grounded, we want to be grounded when we're going to bed at night. We want to be feel safe and secure and steady as we go into sleep. And so that's kind of another one, going back to the signatures of what we use. This one also has some wood, lang lang, marjoram. So working a little bit on like the hormone side of things through lang lang, and working through like marjoram is kind of the body side of things. Roman chamomile is very calming. Vetiver is one I talked about as a great one for this nervous system. So last week we talked a lot about the sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous system. Are you in rest and digest parasympathetic, or are you predominantly in like the sympathetic fight or flight state a good chunk of your time? Vetiver one is one that can help like calm that. I think about in people when they have like the busyness. Some may say it's like ADHD or whatnot. Vetiver is a really great one for supporting that rooting. It's like a very earthy smelling oil, and vanilla to help like synergize it, and then Hawaiian sandalwood is another really earthing, like very grounding component. So that's in like the oil that we can diffuse at night. We can spray it on our pillow, we can maybe rub it on our wrists and the back of our neck or on the top and bottom of our spine. or you could use those individual oils as well. And let's see, Melissa is one that came up in one of the formulas. I don't remember which one now, but we had talked about Melissa yesterday as lemon balm. It's very calming. It's supportive to the thyroid in many ways, along with ashwagandha came up yesterday. And it's an adaptogen that helps our body regulate kind of on this cycle rather than having these really big oscillations in how we feel. We want to get into a closer range as we adapt through the day, which hence the term adaptogens. So those were two that also came up in sleep formulas. And what does that do for us? It's helping with kind of more on the hormone side of things, which then filters into our kind of triad of reproductive hormones, sleep hormones, or adrenal hormones, and our thyroid hormones. So they're all like in communication, and we can tweak one and it also helps the other ones. So sometimes managing the cortisol is not enough, but if we look at like progesterone estrogen ratios, by supporting progesterone a little bit, it can help even out and sleep through the night. So hormones can become involved in this picture as well. As I kind of mentioned, Lang Lang is one that does support some hormone balancing. I wouldn't say that like one little bottle is usually the thing that fixes it all, but it's one piece of the puzzle into creating that space where we sleep well. I brought up Motivate as the other one on there because of the factor of like we need that stimulation during the day, and sometimes in the morning we might need a little bit more of that motivation or to go to the, to get our movement in, and then we have something more that balances. So these they use as like could be a balancing pair that you use one during the day, one at night. And from there, talking about grounding at night, since I mentioned like the cedar wood in here, it came up yesterday of grounding sheets because we talked about it the week before and what they do. So essentially, if you hear of like a grounding mat or grounding sheets on a bed, some people are like, oh my gosh, I did that and now I sleep so well that you can actually feel this difference. And it is just, it's a plug into the grounding spot of your outlet. And they do have you test it first to make sure it's actually grounded. And so then essentially it's like you're laying outside on the ground when you're in your bed because it brings that grounding frequency, which is this electrical charge, this negative charge that then helps the body come out of that excited state into a grounded state. It's kind of the easiest way I can explain it because it's not that simple. But that brings up this idea of frequency. So the question there was, okay, well, what about other frequencies like red light and the violet light and whatnot? And all of that comes into the spectrum of how our body and what we see is a spectrum. What we hear, what we receive in our body. Some of them, most of them, we can't see. We can't even exactly feel a lot of times. But everything in our body is mapped out as the human body field. Everything is mapped out to a specific frequency. So then we know, like my scanning system has that blueprint, and we can compare ourselves to that to see where should we be putting energy in to help reset that frequency to where it should be, where it matches to support our sleep, our energy, our organs functioning properly and whatnot. So we talked about that a little bit. And I guess tying it back into a little bit more on the stress side of things is sleep and stress often go together. That when we have more stress happening, our sleep can be off in one way or the other, oversleeping and we're undersleeping. When we have that oversleepiness, that heaviness, we talked a little bit about the serotonin earlier, using in formulas, because that can be a big picture. If we don't have enough energy that we're using during the day, which is our like balance of like no movement to movement or activity to inactivity or rest to energy, is that can shift that balance off. So if we go through our day and we have low serotonin, for example, or low dopamine kind of chronically, we see that a lot of times in like winter time, or they call it seasonal affect, or just in general, we can have a lower affect or lower energy level. So like, how do we naturally support serotonin? How do we naturally support dopamine? And what is the difference between the two? So serotonin, I generally see it as like, I can still do things, but I'm like really tired and lethargic with it. Dopamine is usually like, I just don't even want to get out of bed. So that's a generalization again of what the two different systems would look like. But then we can take hormones or help with herbal side of things or frequency side of things, such as the patches. We talked about the sleep patches, the stress and anxiety patches um, that look like this. And it is imprinted with frequencies for whatever it is. This one's a pain and inflammation one. So it's going to have frequencies such as like turmeric and ginger and anti-inflammatory agents, maybe some magnesium. The frequencies of those are imprinted into these little silver components, and then that holds that frequency for 3 days on our body. And what our body does is it's like reading this information that we're giving it on the back of our left shoulders. If I can get turned around enough back there. I don't think you can, but I have one on my back of my left shoulder. And it's just helping to give the body the information to where then it actually resets to match those frequencies. So it's one that if you wear them consistently for, let's say, the stress and anxiety one, for 2 to 3 months, or depending how long you've had it or the acuity of the stress, your body, you won't need to keep replacing them. Your body is now, instead of being at this threshold, it has reset to this threshold. And you'll have the minor oscillations, and then you maybe need a reminder if something happens and you put them back on for a while. But that's also why I love integrating bioenergetics and frequency into our health, because just like the oils, just like herbs, they have a frequency that gives our body information that can then help the body heal from the inside and reset back to where it can function and heal on its own without needing something all the time from our external environment. We, of course, went into a little bit of on food topics and the herbs and whatnot of quality, and like where I've talked about this before too, of the energy of what we're putting into our body is also really important. So up here we're pretty lucky. We have, hunting and fishing and whatnot. So getting the life of what that animal brings into our body, or if we're harvesting fruits and vegetables up here, that, or wherever you are, if you're harvesting your own fruits and vegetables, the vibration of that is so alive and it brings that into our body versus something that has been shipped and processed and added, a fungicide to get it up here and whatnot. But nuts and seeds are good for us in a lot of cases. It helps give us that, that protein snack that we need, and, the energy to help us during the day or to stabilize blood sugar at night. So we also have to know when to let go of what level is okay, that we're doing the best that we can. We're going to make the choices that we can that doesn't give us more stress onto our system. So it's that balance of knowing I'm doing the best that I can, and is there something else that I can add to just like modify? So I don't know if I mentioned the book last week. I think I might have. Atomic Habits came up in something I was listening to, and somebody in person had mentioned the philosophy, but didn't know that that's where that came from. And so I mentioned, I was like, oh yeah, that book will talk about how this team, this cycling team, made all these little fine adjustments, studied it, and made those changes to create like these Olympic gold medalists that took that won it for multiple years in a row because of all those little details they paid attention to. So what are a few couple details that you can attend to that would help make a difference in your stress and anxiety, in your sleep, in your lifestyle, in your weight management, whatever it is that you're working on right now? What is like the one thing you can do today that you can carry on tomorrow? Can you put a patch on? Can you set your sleep time to where you actually have an alarm that tells you when to start laying down to bed? Um, can you change and having one more whole food a day? Look at your protein sources. It's all about these little things. Can you start like one of my patients, can you just start walking to work every day, regardless if it's raining or snowing or whatnot? You have the gear to prepare yourself, and it's just like what you do. So that is my challenge, is really overall the goal is to take control of our own health and to know what to do. And I hope these are helpful education wise, because I can look at almost anything at a label and say, okay, this is why this is in here. There was one on there I wasn't familiar with. And so I need to go look that up. I need to go back to the bottle and see, because I'm not as familiar with that herb. But it does come up more often. So it's something that is cycling through like common products. But otherwise, like with the training we receive, I love it because I can look at something, and I don't always love looking at everybody's supplements, just an FYI, because it can be like the right the right ingredients in there, but I can't tell you whether that product is going to be what you need because it also has to do with the integrity of how that product was put together, the manufacturing process, where is it grown, how and when is it picked for oils and herbs and whatnot. It matters as well. So I hope this is helpful and let me know. Let's see. Oh, the one thing that came up as I was kind of winding this down is even something as simple as breathing. Can you take in, and I didn't mention this yesterday, but I usually mention it in my yoga classes and meditation usually, is this breathing in for 4 seconds through your nose, finding a pause for 3 seconds. So I'm not really holding my breath, but it's that like stillness at the top of the breath, and then breathing out for 5 seconds. So you're having a longer exhalation to help reset that nervous system. And I think I did mention this last week, but it's so foundational. Like if you could just integrate in breathing every day, whether it's when you're going to bed, when you're like when I saw my youngest do last night, I just started breathing because that's oftentimes if I'm like, all right, but you need to calm down. Like, how can I do something that's also going to be positive? It's like, let's breathe. Like, just breathe through your nose, please. And it doesn't always work that smoothly. Sometimes it backfires. It's like, okay, I can breathe, and you'll like just start breathing really fast. But if you can follow that pattern and it be something you can implement that can make a difference on resetting that nervous system, it then has this filter of lowering our cortisol, which can help rebalance that hormone, that circadian rhythm. And it can have this beautiful cascade with one simple thing. So start with something that you can integrate in and then continue using. And I'd love to hear feedback, questions, if there's challenges, what you're working through. So thank you so much for joining me again. I'm Dr. Alana McLaughlin, and I'm here to help you just understand and gain control of what we can for our health. Take care for now. See you next week.